love it. And also, just a heads up, we've already been recording, so
Yes, I
we don't
saw.
have to worry about. Okay, good. So we don't have to turn on the like, oh, the red light's on
Hi.
thing. We could just go. There's absolutely no format, but I am very curious if you're down to just jump into it. Um, as you know, the more than a business, the program that I'm in the process of launching as we speak. We're wrapping up beta, so it's really really exciting. But the promise that I'm making to those who I work with moving forward are
Mhm.
to help coaches, healers, teachers really who know that this is their work, right?
Yeah.
They're being called to it. They've known it. They've done the work to get this far, but they have since stepped into the arena of business, whether that's launching it for the very first time, whether it's growing it, but either way, that conversation has become a little overwhelming, a little daunting as we understand, and it's a learning curve.
Yeah.
So at More Than a Business with the program, what we're looking to do is really remove the uncertainty of business for these healers and these practitioners so that they can focus on what they do, and then they can leave the entrepreneurial stuff up to me and our team so that we can just help not only make their success easier, right,
Mhm.
and more sustainable, but also really empower them to just continue to lean into the things that they love to do that inspires them, which is the work,
Yeah.
and learn as we go instead of this process of, okay, you've been certified, you've been qualified, you've been whatever that journey has looked like to get just that far.
Yeah.
Now you got to start your business in hopes that you can earn a living that supports the work, right? So as someone who I know has been through many different seasons of this journey, what I am most curious to hear right off the bat is, you know, stepping into, well, we'll first start with what you do, right? Because I think that's something that's really special and unique. And then what I'd love for you to just explain what you do, but also from there lean into like what your journey to discovering this gift and trusting this gift has been like for you.
Mhm. Wow. So, I'll give you the short form and then the little bit longer form that's still short of what I do.
Yeah.
I help people uncover their authentic truth is what I do.
Yeah.
Short form.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I usually find myself assisting people pleasers, or you have
Mm.
that pattern of people pleasing, codependent patterns,
Mm-hmm.
innocently giving your power away to something outside of yourself
Mm-hmm.
to come back into self-love.
Mm-hmm.
Huge. Connecting back to real source instead of other people
Mm-hmm.
as source.
Mm-hmm.
Balancing your masculine and feminine energies
Mm-hmm.
so that you can live what I just said, completely liberated in the
Mm-hmm.
truth of who you are, your soul blueprint, your dharma, your essence. Because what's the point if you're not doing that? What's the point?
Mm-hmm.
What's the point? And I do it through a variety of ways. I have been skilled in energy healing, intuitive arts, which is also psychic work as well, energy work,
Mm-hmm.
and consciousness expansion, which is where our energy shifts to a higher frequency, love, compassion, acceptance, and our world changes as well. To actually live a life of abundance and joy and purpose. So, you can ask me more if you want, but that's what I do.
So much more. I've experienced your work firsthand. I mean, that's literally how we met. And it
Yes.
is, I've told you before that, when we first met, I've always been open, like I've always known like the kind of work that you do doesn't just exist, but that it's real, right?
Yeah.
I've always had this like intuitive knowing when I'd hear other people talk on, you know, uh, their experiences or, healing journeys that they've been on before. And but there was still this level of skepticism that I had,
Mm-hmm.
right, coming into it. And literally you blew the doors open the very first time we met, and for those that aren't, for the listening that, um, uh, want to know what I'm referring to. So when we met, you were doing Reiki, individual Reiki. You were doing classes, but also
Mm-hmm.
you were doing individuals, and an opportunity to work with you was gifted to me. So I did not know you. I had no idea who you were from anyone walking down the street. I
Showed
didn't
up
know what
on the
you
door.
did. Right. And, I was given the address, given the time, and I showed up, and it happened to be, your beautiful home. And, uh, I walk in, we had a brief little exchange. I felt comfortable. I'm grateful that you did as well. Um, and then we started doing the Reiki healing. This is my very first experience with any of this. And you were saying a lot of things I remember that were really interesting to me. And they definitely were close enough that I was like, okay, like I'm here. Right. But, still just kind of feeling it out. And I can't remember, exactly what came before it, but I remember you were sharing with me that you were having like I would call it a download or intuitive
Sure.
moment. And you were saying something to the effect of, you were talking about my spirit guides, and you saw a lot of Native Americans and a lot of these kind of things. And I was like, okay, you got my attention, because that's what I've always been drawn towards. On my mother's side of the family, that's like kind of the dominant influence.
Mm.
Um, so it definitely had my attention when you were saying that, because it didn't feel like something that anyone would just randomly pull out. Right.
Right.
Like that's, to me, that felt very, that's not something people would normally say
Very
if they
specific.
were just if they
Yeah.
were just being vague or trying to figure it out. But then you went in even further, and I was in the process of, I was in a bad place in a relationship at the time, and I was moving apartments because of a bad place in a relationship. And you were explaining to me like some of the things that you were sensing that I should have in my space.
Mm.
And at the time, you were saying, you saw an image of this Native American, who to you felt like a warrior of some kind. And then you were like, and I don't know where this is, or I don't know where it comes from, but like, I also see wings. Like, I don't know what this is, but I see like these wings. And I had to stop you. And for those that don't know, I have many tattoos. But one specifically that I had gotten, I'd say about a year or so prior to us meeting, is literally a Native American warrior with wings. And I like had to get off the table. I'm like, hold on. Like, this does not make sense. Again, we'd never met. You'd never seen this. You have no idea. So it was that moment that I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know what magic you do, but you got my attention.
And just for the listeners, you had it covered. Like I couldn't see it.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, it was covered by
I
a
had long
clothes.
sleeves on.
Yeah, and you were like, you lifted it up. You were out. You were like, what?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was much more to it. We could spend the whole hour explaining some of the nuances that came through in that
Yeah.
conversation. But that was the moment where I was like, okay, like, I don't know what this girl does, but she's doing it. And I want to know more. Um, so with that, for those that were like me, that have this like kind of knowing, or they have an interest or a curiosity of some sort to energy work, how would you describe it to someone that is on the fence?
Mm. Well, it's something to me that we're all born with it. We all have this
Mm-hmm.
capacity in us, and we're tapping into this all day, every day, without
Mm-hmm.
us really knowing, what to call it. Like when you think about somebody across town and they call you,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing, or you dream about somebody and then they call you, or it's so and so's birthday, or um, we have this ability in our energy field to pick up on things that are not physical. And it's, when we walk in, you guys have probably had this happen a million times. When you walk into a room and you can sense, you're like, oof, it's weird energy in here.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you able to sense that? We don't kind of talk about why,
Mm-hmm.
but you must have a sense thing that comes past your body. Your energy field expands 2 feet past your body. So that's why when we walk into certain places, we can feel what's going on in there. If it's a birthday party or a funeral, where we can sense it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think and this is my work. with somebody who may be newer, but saying, hey, you're normal that you have this.
Mhm.
It exists. It's real. You're not crazy. And it's okay to practice it and use it like you would learn French or Spanish or Italian.
Mhm. Mhm. I love this.
Yeah.
I literally had a client today, and she said something that was very interesting that I think is kind of spot on for our conversation right now. So we were going through an exercise, and I like to do hot seat style questions, and really challenge people to say the very first thing that comes through versus the thing they come up with.
Yeah.
Right. So kind of that intuitive voice that whatever that thing is. And I always say, like, it doesn't even have to make sense, like just
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, because I believe that's a window into truth more than, what we do with it mentally.
Mm.
Um, and so I'm going through this exercise with this woman. It's the very first time I'd ever spoken to her. And she made a comment about her intuition.
Mm.
And she said that she doesn't trust her intuition. And I thought this was interesting. So I'll share my follow up, but I'd be curious to know kind of where that takes you.
Yeah.
So what I asked her was, is it that you actually don't trust your intuition? Like that's a genuine feeling, you do not trust it? Or is it that you fear what following your intuition will disrupt or challenge you to face, that
Yeah.
maybe is frightening for you, anyone listening, right? So that was my response, and obviously the conversation unfolded, and it was a really powerful one. But I'd be really curious to know from your perspective, just as someone who has done this work firsthand. I mean, I know you've been in the trenches for years in your own work,
Yeah.
and learning how to support people through, you know, this education, this understanding, this, discovery,
Yeah.
both of self and of gifts and all these beautiful things that are very difficult, I think, for people to comprehend at first.
Yeah.
So how have you experienced people navigating, what their truest self, when they begin to explore what that is and begin to practice that and do those messy, uh, you know go through the mess of experiencing it for the first time, many of us?
Mm-hmm.
How is it that you are able to help them find safety, because so much of the lives we build, especially if we've gotten into our adult years, is built on this performance?
Yeah.
So finding true self becomes the greatest threat to the
Yeah.
relationships, the dynamics, the careers, all of these things that maybe we have established, up to that point.
Yeah. It's multi-layered here. If you have this, you're not alone. This is what I work with everybody on. Matthew
Mm-hmm.
too, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we have trauma, or we'll just say trauma, the first thing we do is, well, one of the things we can do is let go of trusting our intuition and trust external forces, the person, so that it's a false sense of safety. But if we were to trust ourselves and have that deep connection with self, it might not have kept us safe. So I'd say first step is saying to ourselves as adults, hey, there's an adult in the room right now. That tactic kept us safe. Not having a connection to our intuition, distrusting our intuition, fear of following it. Thank you, sweet one. Yes, it worked. Because we don't want to invalidate that experience. We want to bring massive compassion to it. And then, hey, that's outdated. I'm here now. Let's explore this. So, in one of
Mm-hmm.
my astrological charts called the Gene Keys, it's a whole energy system. One of my gifts, and something I'm here to impart with others, and something I've studied on my own, is slow and steady wins the race.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've seen this in my own life and the life of my students, is that when we're learning to trust ourselves again, just a little bit at a time, because we spent 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years
Mm-hmm.
following what our mind tells us to do. So,
Mm-hmm.
really genuinely, if you can stop and pause, if you're not driving, or do this after you listen to this and say, hey, this distrusting, like, let me look at my life. Let me take a second and look around at my life and actually ask myself from a higher level of consciousness, is it working to not trust that? Is that keeping me safe? On the deepest level possible, because our mind will come back and say, well, yeah, it is. I have this much money. I have enough money in the bank. I'm have an okay relationship. I have okay friends. And then we say, is that true freedom? Is that true abundance? And then we look, and then we say, because it can seem scary, our nervous system will shut us down if we're like, okay, just listen to this podcast, great conversation, I'm going to trust myself again. And we say, no, let's start small. Let's go little. Let's try it with the small things where there's not a lot of threat. Right. So
Yep.
that's where I would start.
It's funny that you say that, because again, this conversation that I was having earlier, what this individual was sharing is we were identifying what the appropriate next steps were. Like, so I asked, like, what is the one thing that, I use the language that they use, obviously. And I was asking, what's the one thing that your intuition would like you, or what is the one thing that your intuition needs in order to begin trusting itself, right? Now, again,
Yes.
I'm communicating to that part of her because that's how she's describing it. And it was interesting because she said, organize her paperwork, right? The funny thing is in the very beginning of the conversation, before I knew any of this, before she mentioned her intuition, I asked her, I was like, what's the one thing that you would like to achieve by the end of the year to feel like this was a success this year specifically, just to kind of, understand where she was at and what she, what was in her vision and these kind of things. And what she said was, I would like to feel less chaos in my mind. And immediately what her intuition led her to do was organize her surroundings.
Interesting.
Right? We went in much further, so I'm aware of all the things that she wanted to organize, and she just identified her paperwork as being like essentially the most accessible thing that her fear, her mind would allow her to do.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just interesting, that correlation. The intuition said organize, and she came in saying, I don't want to feel this chaos anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to identify, like, it's that deeper knowing, that deeper truth. Like, transformation isn't this hurdle or this long jump, right? And something else that I shared with her that just came back to me was, I genuinely believe this. There's no human being that requires being fixed.
Right.
I genuinely don't believe there's such a thing as fixing any of us.
No.
What I do believe in, however, is that the parts of us that we don't like, or that, cause us a great deal of suffering or pain or whatever that might be, whether it's parts of us or parts of our story, it's not about fixing those things as much as it is developing a healthier relationship with them. Right. Just as we would with with someone else, right? If we have a disagreement and it's someone we genuinely care about, at some point, I hope we come to the table and we have a conversation where we begin to understand what the other is seeking. And I always say it with conflict with individuals, it's like, to understand and to agree are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? But to understand means you're able to comprehend, you're able to make sense of how they've come to that conclusion or that perspective, while still, understanding where you are, right? Your boundaries, etc. And I find that that's the true with those parts of ourselves. It's not about making it wrong, right? The monkey mind, as people call it, right? That's coming in and giving us a hard time on the regular. It's not about making that thing wrong and wishing that thing would disappear. And only when it disappears have we healed.
Yes.
No.
Right.
Right. But it's, what if we understood what that piece of us was doing? What was it protecting us from? Why does it feel like it still needs to do that? et cetera, and learn, like even asking. I know it sounds silly to those that may, I may have not done this work yet, but
Yeah.
to ask that part of ourselves, like, what is that one thing that you need so that we can move forward? What is that one thing? What is the one thing you wish I understood about
Yes.
what you're protecting? Any of these types of questions will reveal quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, you're speaking of, the same thing I do, love. Like beyond fixing is nurturing, supporting, and loving. Right. And so that's all we ever need. And sometimes nurturing, supporting, and loving is an action step. Sometimes it's, what do I need to know, to feel, to let go of this? Whatever it may be. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just saying fuck.
Sometimes it's just saying fuck. Yeah. To say, if that's what you want to say, that's all right.
If that's your truth,
if that's
it's okay here.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting as you speak. This is such a, there's so many different avenues we could go here. Trusting yourself again also is as simple. It's as simple as a re-education. I find myself saying this phrase a lot. They didn't teach us this in school. They didn't teach us this in school. They didn't teach us this in school. Because, and not to get esoteric, but I'll get esoteric for a minute. Masculine and feminine energy, just archetypal energies in our world. So feminine.
We're not talking gender.
Right. Energy archetype.
Right. We're talking energy.
Yeah. Every gender, right? It's like yin and yang polarities, masculine, feminine. I can go into that more if you want to know. But feminine energy archetype is intuition, is love, is feelings. Look at our world. Do we honor that? Do we put that front and center? Is that taught in school? Kind of weird that only half of the yin yang sign is shared in our world. So we don't have to go off the imbalanced train and just be floating around blobs in our feelings, love, peace, intuition all the time, but we do need to bring it back into balance. And so, cool if this was taught in 5th grade or 3rd grade, whenever a child had the wherewithal to kind of recognize this within themselves. But it's simply, I can't even imagine. It's like an alien coming down and not knowing there's these incredible gifts in the human system. One teacher said it to me. It's like getting a game. It's like, or you and I go to IKEA and we buy this crazy ass furniture set and we get home and we're like, shit, man, we didn't get the instructions. Let's have fun with building an entire house of furniture with no instructions. And like, that's us down here.
Right.
Like here's, or like it got ripped. Here's half the instructions, the masculine energy. And then here's not the other half. And so we're all fumbling around in the dark. So if that feels like you, Matthew, and I understand because we've been there as well, without the directions, throwing screwdrivers, breaking windows. Right.
Right.
So my point is, there's nothing wrong with you if you need a re-education because you didn't get the manual, because that's all we're experiencing. And that's my work. My work is a re-education to say, hey, this is what your intuition feels like. This is what it feels like when you're loving yourself. This is what it feels like when you're connected to God. This is what it feels like when you're in alignment with your truth. These beautiful, deep, invisible feminine aspects of every human being that help us navigate life. Like we don't have that. So of course we'd be walking around with anxiety and depression and sickness and lack and all of these things until one of us finds it and says, hey, tribe, here's these things that assist us. Now, the trusting of it can take time, like we just said, because it's like, I even had that. When my teachers are telling me these crazy things that are perceived crazy things, they're like, this is the way in. And you're like, are you sure that can help me pay my bills? Like, what are you talking about? And then you test it out and you're like, wow. Because I have a way I would love to share that's like this little, it's like these little secret portals right?
Mhm.
And you're like, oh my gosh, that's real. That actually works. That puts money in my bank account and
Yep.
it's fun. And then you start to see that enough times and you're like, okay, I'm upgrading to a new system and sharing it with my tribe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious that you use the IKEA. I always talk about, or I should say, I often use the analogy of a tool belt
Mm.
when describing this. And much like you were saying, like especially when I'm working, I find this a lot because I work with a lot of men, and I find this a lot with men who have that traditional kind of Western civilization type of, you know, idea of what it is to be a man or supposed
Yeah.
to be a man. And it's a lot of, you know, it's a lot of aggression. It's a lot of, you can call it motivation, call it whatever, but it's very aggressive. I know it. I've
Mm.
lived with it the majority of my life. And um, one of my favorite things I love hearing when guys say is like, oh, I'm just not that emotional. And I'm like,
Mm.
fair. I'm always like, that's fair. I was like, and how often do you feel angry? Oh, all the time. I'm like, you want to revisit that not emotional
Yeah.
part? So, and I find that, how I like to describe it is, I feel like when we're born with a full tool belt, and each one of the tools is a different emotion or a different
Mm.
emotional state. Right. And they exist in us for a reason. It is required for our survival. Literally, they're not just inconvenient. Like they are
Right.
literally part of our hardware, so that we can navigate, so that we can connect, so that we can protect, so that we can do a lot of different things. Like our emotional states, really, there's a lot of power in each of them. And I think as time has gone on, different cultures, different ideologies have started to vilify some of these emotions in both genders, right?
Right.
And the whole boys don't cry thing. It's so funny because last time I checked, they actually do cry,
Yeah.
right?
So weird.
Biologically, it's required.
Yeah.
So this idea that we don't, or else if you do, it's weakness, is an example. And what I find is like, so you're born with this full tool belt. And then as you're being raised and you're going through your experience of life, you start to learn, or people start to convince you that there's certain tools in that belt that are not appropriate for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And for men specifically, I don't want to speak to women, but for men specifically, it's as if, you get into your late teenage years, early 20s, your early adulthood, right? You're supposed to be an adult now. And by the time we get here, they've pulled all of these different tools out of our belt. They've pulled the
Yeah.
ruler, they've pulled out the pencil, they've pulled out, the nails. And essentially what you're left with at the end of the day is like a hammer and a wash rag, right? That's the nurturing side of us, I think. I don't know why it just came to mind, but there's always one in my pocket, so there it is. Right? So you're left with these two things, and it's as if the world at this point says, great, now you have what you're supposed to use. Now go build your dream life. Or,
Right.
to put it more literal, go build your dream home. But you're only allowed to use these two tools, right?
Right.
The wash rag and the hammer. Oh, and by the way, make sure that home is perfect. There's zero flaws. It can withstand any storm that ever comes through, because you can't show that you're weak or that you're struggling or that you need help in any way, shape, or form. Make sure that it's also the best looking home in the neighborhood. Make
Mm.
sure everyone admires it and they would rather live in yours than their own. Like, make sure it's all of these things. But again, you're only allowed to use the wash rag and a hammer. Good luck.
Yeah.
Right? And we wonder why, like an IKEA furniture, where we've built all the things, but we look down and there's 48 parts still there. And you're like, oh shit. Like, I don't
And
think
the
this is how it's supposed to go.
and the confusion, the sheer confusion and lostness we feel.
Hmm.
That
And not
pain.
be- and I think it's not because we're lost, because we've been conditioned that we're not allowed to use the compass,
Correct. 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 And
right?
no one has
Using the tool
educated
belt.
us. No one has educated us to say,
Yeah.
this is what this tool does. Here's all these things. This is how
Yeah.
you process an emotion.
Yep.
This is how you connect to your
Absolutely.
intuition, whatever it is. And we're coming back into our power. We're switching it. We're balancing the energies on the planet.
Which comes with a lot of disruption.
Comes with a lot of disruption. Yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Yeah. All right, go ahead, please.
Well, I just had the feeling that maybe someone listening is the one in their family that's different, and that's when you make the sovereign choice. Why am I doing this? Do I want the belonging and to stay small and belong? Or do I want to expand in the fullness of who I am and live out my purpose on planet Earth and belong with me and God and those that are in alignment with that frequency? I choose.
Now, for that person, because I can relate to this.
Yes.
For that person, how would you recommend, and I know this is a very broad question, right? But as we both know, when someone starts to make that sovereign choice, or they start to courageously explore that voice in the direction that it's, asking you to go, right? What would you say is the most necessary step? I won't say first, but the most necessary step for them to be able to move forward in that path, despite the ways in which those around them, their current tribe, are going to most likely, I'll say, respond to the changes they're making?
Devotion. And then I would go one step further and say devotion to something higher, which is truth, which is love, which is living out my purpose, which is expansion, which is full expression, whatever it may be. Devotion is the medicine. Yeah. Devotion is and maybe you can feel, because you can feel my energy if you're listening, but maybe you can feel the energy of this. Like I wrote about it in my book. Like I just see a machete in the jungle, and I see devotion you just slam through the trees and you're cutting it and nothing can stop you. And the trees may slam you on the face and you may be sweating and you may get a spider bite, not life-threatening, of course. But you're like, you are, and you don't have to do this from the masculine perspective where it's like blood, sweat, tears, boo, and if you are a masculine essence, you may swing more that way, and that's beautiful. But you can do it in balance, where it's more of power versus force. And
say more.
Yes, there's a Richard Hawkins book titled that. Okay. I didn't read the book. I got the download just by the title, right? Yeah. Where devotion says, I say out loud my choice because regardless of what was handed down to me, I am choosing to be love. I am choosing to be my soul expressed in human form. Okay, so what does that do? That says you can abandon me, you can reject me, you can hate me, you can leave me, you can dislike me, you can criticize me, and I am devoted to my path, my light, my full expression. And at the end of the day, none of that stuff happens. The things we fear, because we've had it happen in moments. So that's why we don't devote. And I invite you in this moment. It is powerful when we make a devotion. It is powerful when we say, I choose me, I choose love, I choose truth, I choose full expansion. And whatever comes may come because I choose that. And you will inspire when you are that. And it may take 15 years for somebody to notice, because if you're ruffling the feathers of your family and you're the different one. And I remember when I first started setting boundaries, there were people around me. They were not used to, I was people pleaser central, and they were not used to it. And I was so afraid, and I was terrified of the anger and all the things. And I said, Jamie Lois Wozny, I will be here for you. This is where self-love comes in. And I will meet you and I will be here for you. just said that, but that's, I will be here for you
I
and I will
love
meet you and I will love you regardless. And the people didn't leave. They just,
it.
through patience and through some discomfort, were like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this child is devoted to her worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
It's the stake in the ground, it's the lighthouse, it's the tree. And you choose it, and you choose it again, and you choose it again, and you choose it again, and you devote to how many lifetimes it takes to be in the full expression and expansion and totality of who you are. So I invite you to invoke that power and watch as everything around you starts to shift. Now, that which isn't in alignment with your devotion will rise for you to go to a coach like Matthew to say, hey, what's going on? How do we clear this? How do we move this to set myself free? So again, not always the easy path, but this is what I say too. But is the other way the easy path? Which one would you rather have the discomfort for? Staying small or expanding into the totality of your full magnificence? I'm going to buy a ticket for that movie.
It's probably more like a trilogy.
Right.
Right. But you're absolutely right. And if there's one thing that I want to say, and you mentioned this earlier, but that you fear you'll be alone, like you fear everything will leave you. You fear you'll be alone if you do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you can, I can tell you firsthand, you won't be.
Yeah.
And for anyone that doesn't align with, or they don't want to stand in their own power, right? Your change will, because it's supposed to, disrupt the dynamic, the pattern of that relationship, right? It will 100% disrupt it. And I think the one thing that, I love to say is, your boundaries are not other people's punishments.
Right.
Right. Although it feels like conflict and it feels like you're hurting them. And if the person on the other end of the boundary is, starting to challenge you or guilt trip you or, kind of belittle what you're doing or whatever it is, that just know and trust that I'm going to assume it's not malicious in its intent, but rather it stems from a fear that if you stick to this devotion, they lose you. Mm-hmm. Right? Because they intuitively know that if you're moving in this direction, either A, they got to start doing that work and move alongside you, not necessarily in the exact same way, by the way, right? Because when people are in their path, you're going to know and respect each other's journey. It's not going to be this do it my way only thing, right? But trust that their fear is that they either have to show up, which is the hard stuff, or they can already sense that the disconnect is going to become too great. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Your energy is the invitation for them. Like, what a gift. You talk about wanting to support and serve people. Your life is an invitation for people to up level around you. Whether they know that in their mind or not, they feel it. So, yeah. So you holding that pose and knowing I'm not hurting people, especially this is the codependent patterns.
Phrase.
I'm not hurting
Holding
anybody.
that pose.
Yeah. Holding the pose.
That.
And knowing you are not causing pain, even though their feather may be ruffled. Like Matthew said, my intention is love. My intention is to care for myself and to feel into, my yeses and my nos. That's how I summarize a boundary. A boundary is like, honoring my desire. I get excited. I want to do this thing. Honoring my limitation. I need to nap. I don't want to talk right now. I need time to do what I want to do. I'm not interacting with you. I'm done at the party. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's one thing that I want to say on this, and I have one question. I'm really curious to see where it goes. I've never asked you. I'm actually very interested. But the one thing that came to me first is, it's in relation to your closest, right? Your family. Because I know, and it's, when we fear the changes we fear making, I believe, come because we know it's going to disrupt those who are closest to us.
Mm-hmm.
Those relationships are most likely a parental figure, right? Or some sort of blood relative that's close, right? Is typically where it starts. And there's reasons for that biologically. And then obviously it's friends where you grew up and that kind of thing. But uh, something came to me a long time ago, and I truly believe this, and it's going to be disruptive for some to hear,
Sure.
which is relation does not require relationship.
Yeah.
And it's harsh for some. And I've been challenged many times. And my response, having done this work, it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt to not be in relationship, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This isn't an FU energy. This is like, I've accepted that we're not going in the same direction at this time.
Mm-hmm.
However long that may be, it could be a lifetime. I don't know. But, when someone challenges me on that and I understand why, my only response is I just no longer carry that burden. I'm not burdened by the same belief or the same, goes back to the people pleasing, right?
Same level of consciousness. You're in a different one.
And as painful as it is to not be with those who you are most familiar,
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you firsthand, like for me personally, getting to meet, you were one of the early relationships that I had where multiple things actually. One, close friendship, that spoke similar languages, was very curious the way you viewed the world.
Mm-hmm.
I was always fascinated, but also something that you represent that I don't know that I ever spoke to you about. And that's not the question. So still holding on to that one. But you were literally one of my first genuine female friends.
Yeah.
Like just pure friendship, just like I have with so many, males throughout my life. Like you were and are one of the first. And it's something that I've always held in. Holy shit.
Aw.
I've always held in high regard. Are you a coach who has been struggling to do everything yourself? All of the content, the emails, the marketing, not to mention every time you open your phone, there's a new social media strategy that someone is pitching that just makes you feel like you'll never be able to keep up. When all you really care about is helping people in a meaningful way while building the kind of coaching business your family can depend on. I'm Matthew Paetz, the founder of Momentum, a growth agency that specializes in helping coaches just like you break through your first 100K. If you're a coach who is tired of trying to figure it all out themselves and you just want to build a business that works, then I'm going to encourage you to click the link in our show notes to take your 100K coaching assessment to find out if you're ready to unlock your six-figure potential today. Here's why I said holy shit.
What's on your shelf?
It's hanging here on my whiteboard.
A shell?
No. Oh no, but I know what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
Okay, throwback.
Hold on, it's not clear. Oh my God, that's our workshop.
Do you remember this?
I remember that. That's our workshop.
Do you remember who took it?
No.
Who did you meet that day?
Who did I meet that day?
You're not on the spot. I'm just curious.
Your mom?
My mom. My mom took this.
Oh my goodness. Mama.
So there's a little note. Can you read that?
The beginning to does that say undoing?
The beginning to finding.
The beginning to finding your truth. Oh my God. That is no words. Oh my God.
How crazy. Those were her words years ago when she gave me this photo.
Mommy. that she saw you.
I think
And
it's
talk
also
about feelings.
interesting.
Yeah. Talk about feeling seen.
What's the work you do now?
Helping people uncover their truth. Yeah.
I'm not the only one in that photo, friend.
Yeah. It's us. It's mom speaking to both of us. Wow.
That stopped me in my tracks because I have this hanging on my whiteboard right here.
Yeah.
Let's leave it there for now. Mom had wisdom, man.
Mom had wisdom, and it's the best. Has sharing from a different form.
Yeah.
It's the best gift you can ever give yourself in this lifetime is devotion to your truth, to finding it. Because you may be listening to this and say, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
What does that look like? Where do I start?
Keep asking that question. What does it even mean?
The prayer, the intention, your desire will bring forth the conversations, the people, all the tools in the tool belt. Oh, wow, this is how. Oh, boundaries is part of my truth. Oh, feelings. Oh, desires. Oh, purpose. Like, okay, follow the yellow brick road.
Rather, just because someone told you weren't allowed to use those tools doesn't mean they're no longer available.
Or scary or wrong or weird or too much.
All the above. Get it. Let's get weird.
Yeah.
Let's be too much.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's get scared. Let's do the things. Well, yeah, so that was that. Really special.
Really special.
But I have a question.
Yes.
And this is what I've not asked you, but I'm really curious because this is something I'm finding to be such a beautiful part of the journey and so interesting, and one that I don't think many navigate in ways in which they truly wish they could, or in ways in which they're proud.
Mm-hmm.
So I obviously know your lovely partner, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you guys been dating or together? Or how would you describe it since you cross paths for the first time? Our
partnership. Drum roll, please. 9 years.
Yeah. 9 years.
9 years.
And before I get to the question, I'm curious. So would you say that you were operating at the same level of truth as you are today 9 years ago?
Absolutely not.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So here you are 9 years into this amazing relationship, right? Amazingly difficult relationship at times, as they are if you've been together longer than 9 days.
Opportunity for growth always. Yeah.
Right. But as you've been on your journey to understanding your truth and expressing it more fully and authentically, and, all that comes with this.
Yeah.
While doing this in a relationship that, dare I assume, in the beginning, when you all connected, neither of you were where you are in that conversation then as you are today.
Correct.
So the question I have, and run with this wherever you may take it, how would you encourage those who are in a relationship, a devoted one, be it a marriage, be it a long-term partner, whatever that is, be it brand new, but they're in a relationship and they feel that intuitive voice screaming.
Yeah.
Right? It may start as a whisper. That bitch gets loud if you ignore it.
Yeah.
Right? So as it starts to get so loud that you can no longer ignore what it's calling you to do or face, how have you navigated that while in relationship with someone who is arguably going to be the most affected by these changes?
Yeah. That's an amazing question. My prayer, my intention, my devotion has always been, my truth is the most important thing.
Mm.
I deeply desire to be with you, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
And it is my prayer and my hope and my wish that you meet me where I go. And I had to choose me first. I had to have the courage and cultivate the courage to say, sweet child, you expand as far and as wide as you want to go. And anyone who can stay with you on that journey, I pray they stay. And so I've always asked for divine assistance to say, hey, if I can be supported with books or resources or a therapist or whatever it may be for Ryan and I to grow together, give me the education that will not make me control him to meet me, yet inspire him to want to meet me, want to change. Has that always been easy? No, it's been sloppy. I've had to so many times in couples therapy, especially as a spiritual teacher, I've had to constantly surrender, like trying to teach him, trying to offer him too much stuff. It's probably one of the hardest things all of us deal with when you, especially being an intuitive who can be like, oh, wow, I see in your energy field one thing you need to tweak. And it would help, you know, but you have to just be human. I'm thinking back to all the so much in 9 years, but there have been times where I'm going to use this word. I don't love it for some reasons, but I'm going to use it. I have fought for myself. I've fought for my truth. I've fought for my worthiness. And Ryan, there's been many times I've been wrong. Many times he's been wrong. This is just not necessarily wrong, maybe hurtful and misaligned and needing to come back home into alignment.
I love the reframe.
Yes, the redo. But there have been times I have stood in my truth, devoted, no, that hurt me, or this is what I desire, and didn't let it go. Even if it took years, said, Jamie, you're worth this thing. And that man has
When you
come
say
around.
Didn't let it go, you meant your worth, not a grudge.
Not a grudge. My knowing, my truth, my desire, my boundary. I held the pose of all the things. And, one of the hardest things, especially for the feminine energy in all of us, because my teacher would say to me, Jamie, patience, 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 express your desire and then give that man time. Always. Right. And so I have had to learn, and this is something Ryan has taught me, to play the long game and to look from a expanded level of consciousness and not like in at the day-to-day stuff. And just go, I'm going to give this thing spaciousness. I'm going to let it breathe. I'm going to offer it patience. And if things aren't shifting, I'm going to come back around again and say, hey, I've noticed this thing. But yeah, it's just to bring it back around. It's devotion to you and your truth. And it, Matthew, I wasn't always there. I was more concerned about, I don't want to lose this relationship for a few years. What if this person can't meet me where I am? Because I am Ryan is deep and open and so loving, and we'll learn the things, the masculine, feminine tools that we do together and the practices. He'll learn them and be open and so beautiful. And as I've been in my thing, he's way more open now without me pushing it on him. But I've had to risk my fear of abandonment, my fear of being alone, to choose my expansion in this lifetime and make that more important. And in my case, I know that's not always in everyone's case, but in my case, that courage to go forward, even with a fear of abandonment or whatever, has made the man show up in, meeting me there every time. So I don't know if I answered it, but that's what came to me.
Yeah, no, I love that. And there's one thing that I want to revisit too. In the beginning, you said that your truth was the most important. Now, I obviously know what you were intending, but I want to make sure for clarity, you're not saying that his truth was less important than yours.
No. Right.
Yeah.
Not at all. They're both important. What I mean by that is, okay, so for example, here's a boundary. These are my desires. And so you tell your partner, here's my desires to live in this certain way. You don't say to the partner, I have to control you so that you meet me in my desires. You just say, these are my desires. is it in your desire to also meet me in these desires? And if it is in your desire to meet me in these desires, then great. We're in equal measure. So when I say making my truth the most important, it's not diminishing him or trying to control him to meet me. It's
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to choose me totally. And are you going to also be in alignment to still want to choose that relationship too?
Yeah. And in your experience, when Ryan kind of, however this looks, right? I'm not asking for the specifics on this piece, but
Sure.
when he maybe would hold the similar pose, right? Where he's choosing his truth, and
Yeah.
perhaps it's different than where how you're operating in that moment or that energy or whatever it is, but he's holding his pose not as a punishment,
Yeah.
right, or a rejection to other, but I think that's the word. Like, how have you guys learned how to respect and hold your pose while respecting the others, while not rejecting the other for not being on the same page per se? Am I saying this? Does it make sense what I'm asking? What I'm curious to know is, because this happens with Allison and I quite often, right?
Okay.
And it's become a really beautiful part of our relationship, and one of the things I believe I'm most proud of, because her and I we in context we have a lot of differences, right? But we've been able to arrive at what feels like the ability, at least we've become more skilled in the ability to allow the other to be in their truth,
Yeah.
and not find that as a threat or a disrespect of some kind, right? Like, it's, I don't need her to do it the way that I do it, or I don't need her to do it because I'm doing it, right? And
Yeah.
vice versa. And she's really the one that taught me this, right?
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, I did not operate that way.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in your relationship with Ryan, like, what lessons have you learned for those that might be in relationship and are starting to discover themselves, right? Or at the very least, one of the parties is discovering themselves. How would you? What's a lesson that you've learned that you would love to just kind of share, with those that are in that space?
Hmm.
Like, how to find your truth while respecting the other, and where they may be.
Yeah, something that's helped me a lot too is why might you have trouble respecting someone else's truth? Look at that.
Mm,
Like is there um I'm not enough, because there was something in there for me of like, if this person isn't listening to me or teaching to me, like, how do you not see me? How do you not see this amazing
mm,
growing being that's right in front of your face? You don't care about that?
mm-hmm,
So, because neither of our truths or your truths are bad or good, it's just your truth. And so using it as an opportunity to see what pain is under the hood that is wanting to be processed by you, wanting to be met by you, and navigating your inner wisdom that says, have a conversation with this person or whatever it may be. Um, yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
Yeah, I find that uh, what can be one of the greatest lessons that Allison ever taught me early on was, and I teach this now often. Um, for me, we're talking about like balance and emotions, right? So for
Mhm.
me, balance, before I was able to articulate it, I wasn't even conscious of this at the time. But in my experience, anger was what I struggled with big time. And, I wasn't a physical person when I was angry as
Mhm.
much as I was verbal, right?
Mhm.
Volume, language, that kind of thing. Definitely a version of myself whom I did not respect.
Mhm.
Um, but, Allison would always say, like, you know, for me, let me back it up and say this. I used to always believe that I had to balance, meant I had to be as kind as I was angry,
Mhm.
right? So balance was this: I had to be as kind as I was angry, depending on the situation. So
Yeah.
I went on, I always say, like, after a night where, I kind of went off the rails and did a lot of things that I was carrying, that I was shameful of.
Sure.
The following days I would go on my apology tour, as I would
Yeah.
as I would call it. Right. And until it hit me that, what would it look like to live a life that I didn't have to apologize for? Right? What would it look like to behave in a way in which I didn't have to apologize? Right? Because we know the difference between standing in your truth and that not requiring an apology,
Yeah.
versus behaving in a way that is reactive, is disrespectful, is childish, young, right? And its attempt to protect oneself, right? And that requires apology, right? We know the difference. And then what Allison taught me, she used to ask all the time, and we just kept repeating this until it became almost a mantra, where what would it look like to be angry and kind instead of angry then kind?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and the one thing that she taught me, and she used to say this to me all the time, that really stood apart, was she'd always say, your anger isn't the problem.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, your anger is justified. I understand your anger. I get why you're angry. Even those moments where it was her that I was, upset with, she would say, your anger is justified. That is not the problem. The problem is how you treat me when you're angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was the first time in my life someone had ever separated the person from the behavior.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because before it was always because she'd be like, your anger is the problem. You have an anger problem. And I would get so upset. I'm like, fuck that. Like, I'm justified in why I'm angry. It's not a problem. The problem is whatever someone did or said or whatever.
Yeah.
Until she separated those two things for me, where I was like, oh, wait, like, so you're saying I'm not a problem, but rather how I behave when I'm in this state or I'm feeling this way is a problem. And I believe the reason why that resonated so deeply with me is because I agreed.
Yeah.
I too didn't like the way that I behaved when I was angry.
Right.
I felt very shameful. I become a version of myself that I did not respect. So when that was reflected back to me in a way that it wasn't combative, it was, she held her pose. And that's something she's always been very good at, right? Within our relationship, at least. I know that's something she had to learn. But I say all of that to say, like, what you were describing and holding your pose and knowing what that is and being able to articulate that, right? Which is a huge piece of the work, right? That's a skill that we develop. But in her holding her pose, because I knew it wasn't combat, I knew it was from love. Mm-hmm. She was calling me forward, not calling me out. Right. And she was calling me in the direction that I ultimately wanted to be going. Right. So her holding that stance, her holding that pose and being strong and her devotion to what she deserved.
Yeah.
It became the opportunity for me to become the man that loves in that way, that could be loved in that way.
Right.
And I began to understand that I had the ability to become. It was a skill that I could develop. It was something I could practice. Versus the whole, like, oh, I am who I am, insert whatever justification, right?
Yeah.
So I share that because, I asked that question about you and Ryan, and because I think that's something that's so important that I don't know that enough people talk about, is how to navigate a relationship that you really do love and care about and want to have long term.
Yeah.
While each party, perhaps at different paces, are doing the work to explore who they are. What is their authentic expression? Because how you met versus how you operate when both figure that out may look very different on the surface, with behaviors, with style, with desires and hobbies and interests and curiosities. That's going to evolve. So, for the hearts to remain in love while the humans kind of figure themselves out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. The one thing that keeps coming as you're talking too is, and this gave me great peace. Like at the end of the day, all you really have to ever do is focus on your own healing work, because you emit a frequency when you do your healing work of love. This is consciousness healing, like I was speaking about before. So you're in more love of yourself, you're in more acceptance, you're in more devotion, you're in more peace. Okay. You are transmitting that energy. We pick up on other people's energy. So guess who starts all of a sudden treating you differently? Your partner, right? Your partner, as painful as it is also, this doesn't mean stay in an abusive relationship. Use your intuition too, right?
That's a whole nother conversation.
If you're like, this is sloppy for a minute, but deeper intuitively, you're like, but it's healthy, it's okay, it's safe, it's messy, we're working through some stuff and it's okay. You know? They reflect back to you. It's hard to see. This is for the spiritual warrior here. They reflect back to you that which you have not processed in yourself, your own level of unworthiness, your own level of undeserving, your own level of fear. So the more that we go, whoa, man, I must be mean to myself because somebody else is being mean to me. I must be, that might not be the exact
thing. And I find it okay, or I tolerate it.
Right. Or there's something going on, and can I use this as an opportunity to see what negative energy is allowing this to be in my field, is allowing this to show up in my experience, and can I shift it? And when I shift it within me, then the external shifts. And I have seen that time and time again with my family, with Ryan. Profound.
It's
like
fucking
recently,
awesome.
Yeah. And it's magic, you guys. It's Hogwarts. This is Hogwarts magic. This is what they talk about, miracles. And I mean, it's real life, practical, like consciousness healing, which I was speaking of. Joy. I'm expanding into more joy. A devotion of mine recently is joy. Learning that joy equals money in the bank. Another conversation we can have. But devoted to my joy. So the other day, Ryan and I were going on a date. And I caught myself because I thought there's this place in nature I really like. And I was like, hey, Ryan, wouldn't it be really cool if we made sandwiches and we went out and we brought the dog and we did this little picnic? And he was like, oh, I would love that. That sounds so great. Do this thing. And I got real with myself because I was like, are you really excited about that date experience? Like, is that your highest excitement, James? And I was like, no, I think my mind picked that because it's like, I like this place. These are the people I love. This is a nice meal. So expanding into a new level of consciousness, I chose joy, and I closed my eyes, and this cafe I had never been to, which miraculously my man had never been to, came into our minds. We had the best time. My energy was in such joy. He was filming me. You know how y'all do on a first date when like, oh, wow, let me take pictures of my lover. And like 9 years in, you guys. Paid for everything. Oh, wait, you want more? I'll buy you more. Like, just the whole night was filled with such, he also, you guys, 9 years I've been with this man. I make him laugh so loud, but he laughed the loudest and longest he has ever laughed in my presence this night that I chose joy. I chose joy. I was vibrating joy. And anyone in my field who was willing and open to expand their consciousness will also be that way too. Right. And so we can say, oh, I'm victim. And it's so easy. And victim, again, another conversation, but we can say, oh, I'm victim to my environment, and we must meet our pain with compassion because our pain is real and our pain is heavy and our pain is deep. And so, yes, and I am so powerful. I'm speaking of everyone on the call. I'm using my word I, but I'm so powerful that when I learn about these tools, and the one that James learned about was choosing joy, that I can affect the surroundings and then I can benefit as well. Right. So just knowing that you aren't powerless to the dynamic if you're not satisfied. There is something you can pray about, open to. And when you shift, you get this mirror of so much love and joy and fun and play back towards you because you're existing in that. Right. So there's that too.
There's so many. I promised a trilogy. There's so many other conversations.
Yeah, I know, right? We'll have to do another.
Yeah, and on that, for the sake of the light here, we'll begin to wrap this up, and I would like to do it with a two-part question, or two questions, however you like to think about this. So, first, and you can answer this in whatever order, but one, I would like you to share where people can find you. Your work is phenomenal firsthand, and we didn't even get into the other beautiful things that you do with the animal communication and all of the beautiful things and the gifts that, I mean, you're just truly, I mean, you're dialed in, and it is healing to receive the messages that you are able to receive and gain and get, however you describe that. It's fucking awesome. That's really just what I want to say.
Thank you.
So where can they find you to learn more about the beautiful stuff that you do? And then from this conversation today, if there was one thing that you would like others to take away from all the things that you shared, all the takeaways, like, what is the one thing, if they only got this would be an hour well worth their time?
Yeah. Choose you. Every day, every moment. It's not selfish. It's the gift. You are the medicine, your truth, your desires, your humanity, your authenticity is the medicine, and it will never be the wrong choice. I choose me is what I would say. You can find me at jamiewozny.com. Easiest place to find me, or Instagram at Jamie Wozny. And I have lots of different offerings for lots of different people. We do live group journeys. I have one coming up soon called Bold Creative Rebel, where we activate this rebel, this bold visionary.
Let's get loud.
Yes, this because you got to have some boldness. And we heal that which is in the way. So we have live group journeys. I have on-demand courses if you want to do stuff at your own pace from home. One-on-one work if you really were like, wow, I don't know how to choose me, but there's this little spark in me that's like, I want a life of devotion. When I say choose me, I'm saying choose divine me, the one who came here to bring light and medicine and joy and prosperity and health to planet Earth. So there's lots of ways you can work with me. So, and reach out if you guys have questions and you're like, I enjoyed your energy, but I don't know how to work with you. I have a contact form there as well.
I love it. Yeah. And the choose me piece, the one thing I'll say on that too, doesn't mean, I believe there's a big difference between selfish and self-centered.
Right.
I believe when we choose ourselves for joy, for healing, yes, it's selfish to choose ourselves first, but when we do, we naturally are inclined to give and be connected with other, right? Because when we choose self, we naturally, a natural state is to be of service and connection to other. When we're self-centered is what I think people fear selfishness means.
Yes, it's
right?
not
Which is, it's all about them.
Yes.
And nothing else matters. You don't care how you affect it. That is not what we're saying.
Right. It's not choose me and never choose you. It's choose me and. Choose me so that my cup runneth over, and when aligned, because my heart will be open when I choose me, I will share. I will love and support you from a place of inspiration and not obligation.
I think that's a beautiful place to end it.
Amen.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. A beautiful conversation. Happy to be here.
Yeah.